Okay, welcome back. The stem is now level, meaning straight. That's the better word, straight, top and bottom. And it ends up looking like you've got a matte black racing stripe down the thing on one side and about halfway down on the other. Do not pay any attention to how parallel or not parallel that stripe is. It's going to vary according to the bulk of the material you're working on. And don't worry about keeping the edge of that flat spot straight. It's irrelevant at this time. So here's an optical illusion that people see it, but they don't see it. And they wonder what is going on. This chunky looking stem and this slender looking stem from the side view are exactly the same. And as usual, this is the worst kind of a thing to try to get across on a camera because of too many reasons to list. But in any event, trust me when I tell you, in person, this pipe here, the one we're working on, still looks massive and chunky whenever you view it other than exactly from the side. So it's shadow. If you were to cast a light, do a shadow projection, it would be fine. But as soon as you turn it just a degree or two, suddenly it bloats up, where this guy looks elegant and slender and properly tapered from all angles. And that's completely because of the fact that there's still too much material here. And by that I don't necessarily mean, although the profile's a little bit whack, not too bad, it's the material is too thick between the center line and an imaginary line on the side, and you've got to cut that off, the shoulders we'll call it, as far back as is necessary to achieve something that looks other than blobby. This, if you were to, if you could, this is more than any other time I can remember. I wish that people were actually here in a chair in my shop so I could point this out in a way that was abundantly obvious by turning it under the light just so. But this will have to do, I guess. Now, you can, if you've got a lot of experience, just dive right in and begin to cut that area down. If you're unfamiliar with that process and you're going to kind of feel your way, I would recommend you take a piece of narrow masking tape. This is hard to do and keep on camera. Take a narrow piece of masking tape. I'm not managing this very well. This working, trying to twist your hands around to stay in the center of a camera frame is much more difficult than it looks, or that I anticipated when I began this silly project. But in for a dime, in for a dollar. Okay. And what you end up with is a no-go zone. It's a guideline. It doesn't go over the tenon here, just folds over the end. And plug that guy in. And now when you start sanding, don't get near the tape and you will not jack the side view of it. The last thing you want is a scoop, because you can't put that back. If you develop a dip anywhere, top or bottom, you got to live with it or replace the stem. So absolutely avoid, now that you've got it level, any more sanding where that tape line is going to give you a sag. So as a reminder, if you are used to doing this, you don't need to use tape after a while, but I'll do it now and give you something to try yourself. It's a good method to learn with. And the other thing is the tools that you use at this point are actually kind of varied. We've got the same foam stick that we did the top and the bottom with, but something that's that broad. Now remember, this is an FT, a fishtail stem, meaning that there's supposed to be a curve, a scoop on both the sides and the shoulders here, and you'll run into trouble using an inch wide sanding surface trying to get that contour just the way you want it. So a combination of one of these, and then a double half round file is the best I've found for this kind of a thing. It's think of an airplane wing. It's got more of an arch on one side than the other. It's pointed. They come in different grits, of course, all files do. And the shallower of these is just right for this area through here. And notice again, even though we want to have a long sweeping line from end to end, we're still largely going side to side to get there, which is counterintuitive, but learn to work this way and it'll pay large benefits down the road. Also, if you're not comfortable with your new tools, you get some new tools like this and you don't want to go removing material from your button, of course. So if when in doubt, wrap a little tape around the end of that. Hockey tape works great as a mask or a guard against anything. So I'm going, finally, the side curve on a fishtail is a ridiculously difficult thing to get symmetrical. And by that I mean it's fairly easy to put a curve in the side of a stem where it flares out. You can get it just bingo on one side, and then you'll do the other and you'll get it perfectly. And then you compare them and they don't match. One is a little higher, a little lower, a little more stretched out, and the other's a little more sharp. And you think, oh man, wait a minute. And the proper tool for that is not available that I've ever found. You have to make it. And after all these years, I still use this thing. So that's how handy it is. And it's nothing more than a slab of whatever kind of wood that is. I ground a gentle arch to it, glued some mouse pad rubber on there. And then usually around 150, 220, something like that is a good number for shaping. And then wrap some material around that, and you hold it in place with your index finger. And then when you need to do this kind of a thing, you have total control and matching the contour of the fishtail profile from the side, or from the top and the bottom is where you see the profile of the fishtail, is made much easier than any other tool I've ever tried to do this with. Do not attempt to sand lengthwise. We've been over that many times. Just side to side and check frequently. And so once you get the profile of the side, meaning that looking down or up, correct, and you get the side profile correct, which we already checked with one of these guys. That was before I turned the camera on. Then you have only to connect an imaginary sideline. Imagine there's a very super, another tiny piece of tape down the side of this. It's thinner, like a piece of thread, and you wouldn't want to touch that either. And your job then is to connect those 2 points, this tape stripe top and bottom, with the imaginary thread stripe down the side. That's after you get the profile the way you want it. And the rest is just eyeballed, how much curvature looks elegant as you're doing that. And the best way to learn that is to use a sample stem that's a nice example of what you're shooting for, and then compare what you're working on with what already looks good, and that'll tell you where you need to remove more material and so forth. After a while, you get a feel for it, and don't have to mess with all these guidelines and stuff so much. That should do it in terms of technique. I'll leave the camera on for a minute or so while I continue to work on this, and you can see how I do it. And then when I'll shut it off, finish this work, and fire it back up again, and we'll be ready to start working on the bowl here. Okay, that's more of the same is all that's required at this time. So I'm going to go do that, and when I come back, the stem will be shaped but not polished, and then we'll get to work on the stummel, and soon enough we're going to have us a new old pipe. I'm excited. Back in a minute.